Today on Crappy Days, you're going to hear me and Jake bitch about the years we were supposed to have been born in, why NBA Jam is the pinnacle of video game basketball, and you'll also get a little more background on the demon pronouns that Jake was talking about last week. So let's get him on the phone. Welcome, everybody, to Crappy Days, the podcast for people born in the wrong generation. I'm Justin. With me, of course, is Jake, our co-host. For those of you who missed the first episode last week, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. It's called The Sandlot in Salem, I think we called it, where we discussed our ideal society and talked a little bit about when to start celebrating Christmas and whatnot. So check that one out. This one is going to be a very special episode, even though it's only the second one we're doing, because I'm going to be divulging something to you that even my closest family members don't know, my parents don't know. Today is my coming out day. This is hard to say, but I'm very proud. I want everyone to know that I am transgenerational. Which means, some of you may not know, you've probably never heard of this. It means I don't identify with the birth year I was assigned at birth. So 1990, that's the doctors assigned me that birth year. I fully reject it, and I identify as a man born in 1930. I've always felt that I grew up in the Great Depression. I think it's made me the cynical man that I am today. And it's manifested in many ways. I mean, I wear cardigans from time to time. I look like Peter Boyle from Everybody Loves Raymond. I got a prostate the size of a cantaloupe. For those of you who don't know, it's only supposed to be the size of a walnut. I listen to Merle Haggard. I'm bad with technology. I was hesitant about even trying to put this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and everything because I didn't think I'd be able to do it, but it was simpler than I thought. But I leave all the editing and stuff to Jake because I just don't want to deal with it. My idea of a good time is going for a drive through the countryside on a sunshiny Sunday. I think I've made my point. I'm not a guy who was born in 1990. I don't care what my birth certificate says. That's not my truth. My mom says I was born 3 days late, but the truth is I was born 60 years late based on what they've told me. And Jake, I know you. Well, first of all, what was the birth year you were assigned at birth?
Well, yeah, I was assigned 1991, and it's just, it's been a tough cross to bear my whole life, being born in 1991 and being a millennial, and I really resent it. And so, I'd like to come out as somebody who's also transgenerational, but I identify more with the birth year 1970. It's tough.
X?
Yeah, Generation X, like it's tough to admit that it's my parents' generation, but I think it's a more ideal time than, let's say, 1930, which I know you're aiming for. But with 1930, I guess you would have missed World War II draft, but you would have seen all of your older siblings shipped off and probably come back in caskets. So it would have been an ugly time to be born.
That was very intentional, by the way. I'm okay with living through, living on a shoestring in the 1930s. My dad having to go to the docks every morning looking for work, but of course I wasn't trying to go off to war. I suppose I could have been one of those guys who lied about my age but then again, I would have been like 11 when the United States got involved in the war. I don't think they even would have believed me but what I'm saying is I'm a coward. As much as I identify with things from that era, I would not have wanted to go to war. Fully support him, but I wouldn't want to be there.
Yeah, well, the worst thing
Audie Murphy.
The worst thing you could have been called back then is Yella. So
yeah, which is why I'm 1930 is the year I identify with, and not like 1924.
Yeah.
I also like a nice round, even number.
Yeah, that's actually why I picked 72. I needed to get through Vietnam. Once you got through Vietnam, you only had to worry about Desert Storm. Big deal. That was like a 4-day war in Iraq. No big deal. My dad served in Desert Storm. He could tell you about it. Um, but I do think it was a good time. It was simpler times, growing up in the 70s and 80s. You still had some of those modern amenities though. And there's some other things that I would have enjoyed, like being alive for the '84 Padres pennant run. That would have been pretty great. I think the '80s in high school would have been, a fun time to go into high school. As
Oh
much
yeah.
as yeah, it would have been great. I mean, like,
Fast times at Ridgemont High. That era looks like a fun time.
yeah, who knows, about all the drugs and all that. Uh, but I think 1970 would have been really the sweet birth year. I could maybe push it back a little bit so you could get into college in the 90s and American Pie and all that. I think that would have been a good time. But why else 30? What appeals to you about being born in 1930?
Uh, well, I think more about what adulthood would have been like, which is, I would have been in my 20s and like the 50s. I was watching Goodfellas was on TV last night, and it takes place in New York in like 1955 in those early scenes. And just looking at everything, like the style, the cars, just everything about it looks like I feel like I belong there. The little pizzerias, everything. I don't know. It looks great to me. Looks unbeatable.
Well, I will say there's some good news here in that you could just go live in Cuba right now.
You know what? That's actually funny you should bring that up, because I've always thought if I could time travel for a vacation destination, pre-Castro Cuba looks fantastic.
Post-Castro Cuba looks fantastic. I'd still like to go.
Yeah.
I mean, as terrible as it is as a country in a lot of ways, I've heard good things about it from people who have been able to get over there.
Yeah.
But I do like yearn for the time too, where like nothing was offensive. You could bully kids at school and totally get away with it. We need to bring bullying back. I think it's sort of fallen out of vogue.
We need a
And
healthy amount of it.
yeah, not too much. Maybe not 1930s amounts, but 1980s. I think they found that sweet spot. My parents' generation did.
Hmm.
The music was pretty good in the 70s and 80s. Really, the only two downsides I could find when I was thinking like, oh, how would it be growing up then, was the clothing was absolutely egregious. It was ridiculous. The hairstyles, everything was absolutely
In the 70s or the
insane.
80s?
80s especially.
80s was a great era
What the
for a lot of
hell?
things. Sports.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't mind the political atmosphere of the time so much. But yeah, the hair, especially the big hair on women, horrible, horrible look.
It's terrible. The big hair on guys, even worse. Like the hair metal
The,
thing.
the mullets and
What
stuff,
the hell were they thinking?
atrocious.
And then the only other downside I could really think was it was kind of the heyday of the American serial killer.
In the
Like the
80s,
70s, 80s. Yeah, like
yeah,
Richard Ramirez, Bundy was alive and well then. Yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. So that
I
was like
guess
a big
so.
fear.
I think we've got just as many today, but they don't make headlines in the same way they used to, because today everything is so horrific today already. It barely even would make news.
Yeah, well, that's 100% true. Like, I don't think we've just lost like the personalities that were the serial killers back in the day, and like that was the big thing that everybody was afraid of was serial killers lurching in people's yards and everything, with their kids going out and running amok, and then you know devil worship in music, and if you play it backwards, you'd hear the devil, some satanic message in an AC/DC track. And those were the real big concerns back then. Otherwise, it was just kind of like, you're 10 years old, you're off running around, riding bikes in the neighborhood, and just be home before dinner.
Yeah, I think back then people were more scared of being in their house and their house being broken into. And now everyone's scared to leave their house.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yep, 100%. Like a lot of issues back then, but just be home before dinner. Now it's like you can't leave your house, and if you do, throw a mask on 4-year-old Timmy.
Yeah. When I was a kid, the rule was, and my neighborhood was not great. Like, I don't want to make it sound like I was in the ghetto, but if I went like 2 blocks down to the park to play basketball or something, it was kind of borderline. It was like there were shootings a few blocks away from there, like when I was growing up. But the rule was like, I don't know, we didn't have a tight leash on us. The rule was just be home before it gets dark. And my dad would emphasize, not when it's dark, before it gets dark. But that was the only rule. And of course I didn't have a phone or anything. We could have gone anywhere. In the time that I was gone from the house, I could have walked from Kennewick to Benton City, and he wouldn't have known where to find me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I did have an electric scooter at one point. Like I remember that was a big thing. And some kid,
Oh yeah.
So my parents bought me like an electric scooter. I rode that over to my friend Max's house, on a number of occasions. And then some kid in Richland got schmucked and killed on one of those. So the whole electric scooter thing went away and got banned in the Tri-Cities like a month after I got mine for Christmas.
Oh,
or maybe it was
geez.
my birthday gift. But no, we did still have some of those freedoms. I don't know. I think it would have been nice to like not even have a cell phone that your parents could check in on you.
I horribly miss the days of not having a cell phone. I know
Yeah.
you don't have to go back to the 50s to be there. I actually did live through that. I was kind of late to get a cell phone. Most people had them like junior year, sophomore year, like when I was growing up. But I didn't get one till after I graduated. And I loved that nobody could get a hold of me ever for any reason. Like
Mm-hmm.
my friends would come to my house and knock on the door if they wanted to hang out with me, or they'd call the landline and hope I answered. Those were
Mm-hmm.
the only options.
Yep. Hey, is Justin there? It'd always be your parent or whatever answering. And then
Yeah.
you'd get Justin on the line. Hey, can you play? Or do you want to come over? And then Justin would be like, oh yeah, let me go ask my dad real quick. I just had your dad on the phone, for instance, right? But then you have to hang up, go ask him, come back, and then you're over at the house in 20 minutes later, 20 minutes later. Uh, as opposed to just texting. I don't even know what kids do now. I don't even think kids hang out anymore. I don't think that's really even allowed. Like parents are just such helicopter parents now that like they will not let their kids, and this is even pre-COVID. They just don't
Yeah.
really let them hang out, or there's not an interest to hang out with friends. They just all go home and then they all just talk on the phone or FaceTime with the camera facing up against the ceiling while they're just doing whatever the hell they want to do.
Yeah.
And that's their idea of hanging out. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't think it's the norm to not allow kids to hang out, but I think that's way more of a thing than it used to be. They're like, well, why do you need to leave? You can, because they're always on their phones anyway.
yeah, there's probably a lot of parents that are trying to push their kids out of the house, but they don't. They have everything at their fingertips inside their
Mhm.
own bedroom.
Xbox Live.
Yeah, yep, 100%. And I did have the Xbox Live experience a little bit. Like I got into Halo in seventh and eighth grade. Obviously, like there's a lot we could talk about with video games, but you and I used to go back and forth on 2K a lot. We spent way too much time indoors. And again, I
Oh
think
yeah,
like
we did.
I just think like if Atari or Pong was the only thing we had, it would have been a much better time. We probably would have gotten into more trouble too.
The,
Um,
yeah, the simpler the better. And I do
yeah,
before we move on to more of the video game stuff, um, not to be too morbid, but I know I chose 1930, but I'd be happy to choose like 1905 as well, just to ensure that I would be dead by now. As long as I don't have to live in this piece of shit era, really doesn't matter what year I was born in.
1905. Yeah, okay. You would have snuck past World War I again. So yeah, I think there's some thought
Not
to
saying
this.
life would have been great, but I'd be dead, and that's great. I've said that to many people. They'd be like, "What do you think's the best era to grow up in?" Like, I think the '70s look cool. I think the '80s look cool. And I go, hey, as long as I'm dead by now, man, doesn't matter.
I will say, like people do romanticize about the '70s because of that '70s show and everything, and like hard rock music and all of that. There's still a lot of the cultural influences from the '70s left over. It was really an absolute terrible piece of shit decade. Like inflation was through the roof. There were massive gas lines for hours.
Yeah,
Jimmy
in terms
Carter
of
was
how things were
president.
going in the U.S.
Things were freaking terrible. Vietnam was going on. Carter
Yeah,
was the president. He was a disaster. So yeah, the '70s were
well,
not actually that great.
no, the culture was cool. It was cool, but it wasn't good, I guess is one way of putting it.
Yeah, and then I think everything kind of married together in the '80s with the culture being cool and things going well in the country. But that's my final thoughts on that. So 1970s is the year, damn it.
All right, I'm sticking with 1930. I like the idea of being able to tell my grandparents, "Hey, I'm older than you." Okay, so One thing I wanted to talk about today, you were mentioning like the simplicity of video games, times before Xbox Live and before, like several people can be playing at once and things like that. To me, the ideal video game was and always will be NBA Jam, the one on Super Nintendo. It's just, to me, simplicity is usually the recipe for something that's good. Like, I'd rather listen to AC/DC than like Tool. Like, I hear how complex and talented they are, but it's like, if I don't enjoy listening to them, what's the point? Like, I don't care if AC/DC plays 3 power chords every song. They turn that on at a football game and everyone loses their shit. So that's kind of how I feel about NBA Jam versus the more modern franchises. I think the most popular one of the last 20 years, the series, is probably 2K series.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And like, we used to play 2K a lot back in the day, but I fully hear you with NBA Jam. Something about the 16-bit graphics. It's just video game perfection, and 2K couldn't dream to match it.
No, the thing I like about it is, with how complex it is now, it's like they're trying as hard as they can to be realistic, and then they end up falling very short in some ways. Like, NBA Jam was never meant to be realistic. It's, they jump 16 feet above the backboard. They do 12 front flips, break the backboard. There are no fouls at all. You just knock the piss out of each other.
Yeah.
I had I was going to say the displeasure. I'm not going to exaggerate and act like it's not fun to play the more modern games, but I played a couple games of 2K22 against my 13-year-old nephew today. And it's too much, like, and it was the same way on 2K9. Most of these same problems existed then. Like, that's the one we always played. First of all, big guys in those games, they're all ogres. They labor up and down the court like Shrek. It acts like they're playing basketball for the first time in their life. They can get the ball like down in the paint with nobody near them, and instead of just jumping and dunking it, they take like 10 seconds to do a little pivot, so like the whole team catches up and swats the ball out of their hands. Everything is a foul, as opposed to NBA Jam, where nothing is a foul. You might as well never press the steal button, because any attempt at stealing the ball will be a foul. And then on the other side of that, free throws on this new version, at least, are impossible. They're so difficult. It's so difficult to make a free throw. In 2 games, I probably shot 20 free throws and made 10 of them. That's awful. 50%. Rajon Rondo. Because it'll put it has this meter that shows, but it doesn't even show up on the screen until you already have started shooting. It's just a disaster. And then the worst. Sorry,
Go ahead.
The worst thing, and I know you've experienced this many times back when we played 2K9 and you'd want to throw a controller out the window. The button's just not responding to what you're doing. Like it happened to me today. I got a couple guys like double teaming the player who has the ball, and I'm trying to pass it out, and there's plenty of openings to pass it. I hit the pass button distinctly 3 times, and he did not pass the ball. And I just got called for like a 3 in the key or something and lost the ball. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think like that. I mean, Madden has the same thing where I don't know, these like new sports games, new generation of sports games. They are, like you said, so obsessed with being as realistic as possible. They fall woefully short, in a lot of areas. Although the foul thing, that's kind of like the NBA of today, anyway. But like at a certain point, it's so realistic that why are you even playing go out to your driveway and shoot some damn hoops yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's no longer fun if you're not running around with Horace Grant shoving somebody to the court. So the realistic thing does great on me. And
when you're playing with those 5-on-5 teams, like, you kind of want to just play with the 2 best players on the team anyway. Like, I've got this star player and then like one other guy who's like a sidekick or whatever. You don't really want to pass the ball to every player because half of them are useless.
Yeah, most people like that play 2K, they'll just, like Gilbert Arenas was basically a cheat code back in the day. Gilbert Arenas could put up 90 points in a game of 2K. It was absolutely ridiculous. But that is the fun thing about like NBA Jam. And I know you and I divert a little bit because I actually had the tournament edition of the NBA Jam, which strips away Charles Barkley from the Phoenix Suns, who I know you're a big Suns guy in that game.
That was my duo. Yeah, always. I would
Mhm.
typically with him and Kevin Johnson, I would average between 0 and 4 points with Kevin Johnson and somewhere between 180 and 204 points with Charles Barkley. I think 202 or 204 was my record.
Yeah, yeah. And I actually prefer Seattle, and in the original NBA Jam, they didn't have Gary Payton, but in the
On the Super
tournament
Nintendo, it's
edition,
Detlef Schrempf instead.
it's just Schrempf and Kemp,
Yeah.
which is it's a fine combo. I still use them. But in the tournament edition, you actually get a couple of guys. So you get Schrempf, Kemp, and then they also throw in Payton, and that combo of Payton and Kemp is just so sick.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm playing somebody whose game I don't respect, then I'll go with the Orlando Magic because I do like the Hardaway Nick Anderson combo. Nick Anderson can raid threes.
If you're playing somebody whose game you don't respect.
Yeah, I will say, like, I have actually, swear to God, I have never lost to anybody in NBA Jam ever, except for you. You're the only guy who's ever beaten me. I've taken you to OT twice, but I've never beaten you.
No, I've only ever been beaten by one person, and I'm not going to dignify him by saying his name on this. But first of all, I wasn't using the Phoenix Suns when that game took place. I was using the Sonics, which was like a backup for me. It was like maybe the third or fourth best team for me. And this particular individual, again, who will remain unnamed, was using the Utah Jazz, and he was playing the game in a style that was never meant for NBA Jam. It's meant to be high flying dunks the whole game through, and he was just shooting threes with John Stockton the entire game. And despite putting up all those points from beyond the perimeter, beat me by 1 point. So, and he doesn't ever want to play again because he considers himself a champion for beating me one time in an exhibition game. But this was years ago, and I've since moved on. I know he wants to hear me sulk and say, "Hey, I'll play you again anytime, bitch," but I don't find it necessary. I've put it behind me. I've told him many times, like, look, dude, I'm Mike Tyson and you're Buster Douglas. Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson one time. That doesn't make him the king. So having said that, another person who I'm not going to give the satisfaction of saying their name, but if we want to talk about NBA 2K trying to be realistic, you're going to know who I'm talking about. We used to play 2K9 at your house a lot. And this guy was a recurring, he was a frequent character at your house, and he was always on this game. He used the Houston Rockets. This was in 2009, and the person he would just light up the court with was, in his final year of his career, Brent Berry. Brent Berry, who I would say is best known for being the only white guy to win a dunk contest in like 97 or 6. Or maybe being Rick Barry's son. Maybe that's what he's best known for. But this particular individual would shoot 3-pointers, much like the other rat I just mentioned, just nothing but shooting 3-pointers, and would score in the 60s with Brent Berry. Now, just to highlight a little bit how absurd that is, let's take somebody like Michael Jordan. He scored in the 60s, I think 3 or 4 times in his career. He had a 69, a 63, a 61, and I think a 60, something like that. And so he'd score 60s, maybe even 70s with Brent Berry. I took some time today to look over Brent Berry's career statistics. His career average for points per game was 9.3. His career high single scoring game was 31 points. That was in 2002 versus the Wizards. So 7 years before he was old and decrepit in 2009 with the Houston Rockets.
He was in Seattle then by 2002. I think he was in Seattle, right?
Yes, it was Seattle versus the Washington Wizards.
He was pretty good in Seattle.
Yeah, he wasn't bad, but he only scored over 33 times in his entire career. And they were 30, 30, and 31. And in the year that he 2009, so this was his skill level, what it should have been in NBA 2K9. His average points per game was 3.7. So each time this guy scored with Brent Berry, he had already completed his game average, but he would go on to just
one three
that by about 20.
Yep. Brent Berry, he's a Sonics legend. Come on, put some respect on his name. The other thing he's known for, by the way, is getting cucked by Tony Parker.
Yeah, I've
That
heard
was
about that. I don't
Yep, that was probably
freaking
'09 actually. That's probably why he only averaged 3 points a game because his marriage was falling apart.
that dirty Frenchman, Tony Pepe Le Pew Parker, just getting after his teammates' wives. What a scumbag.
Yeah, I know. A terrible story. Couple other things real quick before we move on from NBA Jam here. The commentary, the announcer commentary is still the
Flawless.
undisputed king of announcer commentary in video game history. He talks shit to you. Terrible shot.
Oh, yes, I love that.
Love it. The other thing is, and I was reading this a while ago, but apparently the lead developer of the game was a huge Pistons fan. So the Pistons are a bit of a cheat code in that he programmed the game to where you can't make a game-winning last-second shot against the Pistons. You'll miss every time.
Really?
Yeah.
I had never heard this.
Yep. Fun fact.
And so what was the duo? Was it like Dumars and Lanier or something like that?
Yeah, I think Bill Laimbeer was it. They might have even had
Or Lambier, my bad.
They might have had Rodman in the tournament edition. I forget who the third guy was. It might have still been Rodman.
I think on Super Nintendo it may have been Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer.
Okay, that's a good combo, by the way.
Yeah,
Bill Laimbeer should be shoving people into the stands if that game had any sort of realism.
Well, he's fitting for that style of play.
Yeah, that game was definitely modeled after. He should have been the cover athlete.
Yeah, they never had one either. I think it was just the ball on fire.
Yeah.
I believe it was that game that coined the phrase Boomshakalaka, right?
Yep.
Did it not come from that game?
100%, yeah.
Oh, I do have to say though, there is room for reasonable doubt because Apache Indian had that song in the soundtrack of Dumb and Dumber. It's called like Boom Shakalaka or something close. So we can't say for sure, but I think whenever someone hears that, they definitely think of NBA Jam.
Well, I think
not Apache Indian.
Dumb and Dumber was 94.
Uh-huh.
And NBA Jam was 93. So I think NBA Jam still beat out
Possibly,
Apache.
but I don't know that the song was brand new when it was featured in the Dumb and Dumber soundtrack. It may have been a few years
Probably
ago. I don't know.
Probably true.
So I think we wanted to get a little more into the NBA itself and what it was like in years past compared to today. I feel like there's a lot that could be said. I don't know where to even begin with that.
Oh, I think you and I mean, we've had a lot of discussions in the past, but like I think we both kind of grew up following the NBA. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm almost positive that you and I were both huge Vince Carter fans. I know I could not handle Vince Carter a damn bit.
Yeah, I worshipped him. Yeah.
Yeah, like, Vince Carter was like 11. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that Raptors purple jersey with the black two-tone back so bad. And I remember I got a yellow Kobe Bryant jersey for Christmas instead. And I was disappointed. And I liked Kobe, but there was just something about Vince Carter, dunking between the legs on your little Nerf basketball hoop, hanging over your bedroom door.
And the jersey from before that era was even better.
Oh, it was way better, but I mean that's just what they had.
The jagged lines and yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I still do follow the NBA. I think you've probably fallen off a little bit in terms of keeping up with it as much.
Yeah. I'll still like I don't have cable or anything, but if I'm at a bar and it's on, like I'm watching, I'm interested. But I just, when it comes to like basketball, football, and baseball, I feel like anytime I'm watching a game, I was watching the Pats and the Bills today, and I was like, this is weird. I don't even know who the Patriots quarterback is. That was a really weird feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because they had Brady for 30 years. I mean,
yeah, but he's been gone for like 2 seasons now. I should know who it is.
Yeah, I totally get it. I actually stopped watching the NBA for a couple of years. I'm picking it back up, but I think my reasoning is, a lot of people point to like LeBron and joining the super team Heat and all of that as kind of like a turning point in the league and ruining it. And I think there's some truth to that, although I think that trend of like a super team thing is fading. The primary culprit for the man who destroyed and ruined basketball is James Harden.
What do you say?
James Harden
I haven't heard this.
he's the most garbage player of all time. I cannot believe that this guy's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's considered like a top 50 all time. I mean, Bill Simmons probably has it like top 20. I'm not even kidding.
I invited Bill to be on this segment, by the way. He said he's celebrating Kwanzaa with his family. He couldn't make it.
But Harden, I mean, for like as good of a shooter as he is, he really brought into the game this notion of like leaning into the contact and just drawing free throw after free throw. So he gets 1 million free throws a game. And it's just pathetic to watch. He plays absolutely no defense. So that's why he's never going to be a champion. But James Harden, he is the guy. He's the murderer of the NBA. Fortunately, I think the league is starting to do away with some of the ticky-tack calls where, the offensive player initiates that contact. So I think it's been more watchable this year. But
that's good. That's good news to hear, because that's one of the things that has turned me off so much from it for a long time. And I despise that methodology of trying to draw contact in that way. And I wouldn't say he's the first guy to do it. The first person I remember doing it, or like really noticing it being something he did often, was Dwayne Wade. Because he would do a thing where he would pump fake and he'd get the person to bite. And when they were in the air, he'd literally jump forward into them. And the refs would call a foul on the defender, and it made zero sense. And it always made my blood boil. And I don't even dislike Dwayne Wade, but I hated that about him. That always bugged me. And everybody else seemed to pick up on it.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Like, I mean, you could go a little bit further back, even like Reggie Miller was a huge flopper, but he just didn't get, all the calls back then. He got a lot of them, but not all of them. Reggie sold the fouls a lot. But the other thing that really like rubbed me the wrong way for a long time with the league is just like this notion that every player, really this goes across all sports, every player is on social media, on Twitter, and the NBA especially, maybe more so than the other leagues, where the athletes are just so vocal about their political ideology or whatever thoughts they have. And you just realize, like, yeah, these guys are just all a bunch of jackasses, self-absorbed idiots. Nobody wants to listen to this. I don't like the window that like Twitter and social media has given to like players and their personal lives and their thoughts. I long for the days of the 90s where Karl Malone could impregnate a 13-year-old in the offseason and everybody could still come together and be like, oh yeah, the mailman, he's fantastic, absolutely great in post.
I was talking to somebody about that recently. I was like, that about him, right? And by the way, I think the girl was 12.
Oh God.
And he was, well, it wasn't when he was in the NBA. He was in college. I can't remember where he went to college. I know he's from Louisiana, but irrelevant. Completely irrelevant to what we're talking about. He was in college and he impregnated somebody who was 12, and I think she gave birth when she was 13. And even worse than all that, I think he has kids with like 2 or 3 different women, and like he was a part of the kids' lives who he had with other women, but that one he just pretended didn't exist. So yeah, mailman delivered in that case and did not, well, he didn't deliver on fatherhood for everyone. He was a little discriminate.
And yet the guy probably still can't buy a dinner for himself anytime he's in Salt Lake City, because again
in Mormon Salt Lake.
Yeah, but nobody really cared or knew back then. Probably that wasn't that big of a story. And now, again,
so here, let me just to clarify here. So what you miss, I want to make sure we're on the same page. What you miss is when guys could impregnate underage women and their character was not attacked. Simpler times.
No, absolutely not. I just miss watching the damn basketball game and not giving a crap what these guys are or who they are. I don't need to know what kind of scumbag I'm cheering for. I would have been wrecked as a kid if I found out that Vince Carter, was a statutory rapist.
Yeah, well, now that I know that, not a fan of Karl Malone. When it comes to like the politics and stuff, I couldn't agree more, because sports used to be the one arena we could go to that was completely free of that. And now it's more rife with politics than almost anything else.
NBA probably the most. They had, BLM slogans blazoned across the court for a year there after the George Floyd, thing. And They really
Changing the
went
names on the
all,
jerseys.
yeah, they went all in on just woke talking points and everything. Their TV
You got some,
ratings went
yeah,
down the toilet.
you got some white guy who looks like Wally Zerbiak or something who's got like equality on his jersey.
Equality.
It was really, really cringy. It just felt really
Yeah.
disingenuous and not a fan.
Yeah, it was just virtue signaling. They got absolutely just shellacked in the TV ratings department, though, so they scaled it way back. I mean, I don't think they're doing anything visible now.
Well, that yeah, at the end of the day, that's all they care about.
Yep.
That's all the league cares about anyway. As long as they think it's good for their, their bottom line, they're going to allow it. And if it doesn't work out, they'll change course. Like speaking of which, the commercialization of just I can't handle it. It's gone way too far. And I'd say basketball and hockey are the worst right now because the jerseys are starting to, get sponsors and stuff. In the NHL right now, they have on the helmets, instead of having team logos, they have like sponsorships. The Toronto Maple Leafs, who for some reason are my favorite team for reasons I can't explain, have TikTok on their helmets this year. And I've almost just pulled fanship completely over that. But it's just getting to be more like they've already got ads plastered all over the boards in hockey, on the ice, everywhere. And it's like, just like, it's never enough. So like sooner or later, them and the basketball teams are just going to look like soccer teams. Like the Seattle Sounders, you have like, it doesn't even say Sounders or Seattle on the jersey. It says Xbox. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, soccer is egregious, but I've actually heard the reasoning is because there's no stoppage in soccer, so there's no commercial breaks. So the teams have to generate commercial revenue somehow. I don't like it. It feels like a cop-out. But what the NHL and the NBA are doing now is they're having their cake and they're eating it too, where they still have all the damn commercial breaks, but now they're slapping logos on jerseys. The big one now is sponsorship logos like right underneath the hoop where it used to read the team's name. So now instead of Boston Celtics, across, it says TD Bank.
And they'll have like Instagram like tags and stuff too, which drives me nuts. Like the @
It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. I hate the way that's going as well. One other thing too that I think the NBA is really missing from the older days is team intro music.
Yeah.
Like I've gone to some NBA games, I've gone to a lot in recent years, and none of them have been able to match the Alan Parsons Project.
The 90s Chicago Bulls.
As soon as the Bulls played that, the visiting team was already down 10.
Yeah. Unbeatable.
Unbeatable. So much so that the Utah Jazz completely copied them. I remember I watched like old footage of like that 96 and 97 final series. And the game starting in Salt Lake would play the Alan Parsons. So for 7 or 6 game series, you'd hear Alan Parsons Project at both arenas. It was the most ridiculous thing that the Jazz just copied them.
You want to hear another arena that was played in? Try the Red Lion in Kennewick when I got hired at Sonic in high school. And they, okay, this is pathetic. Just a little background. It was like one of my first jobs after having a paper route. I was in high school. I got a job at Sonic when it first opened in Kennewick. They opened their first location. It was brand new. It was a big deal. And they had this like group of people who traveled around the country. They were like oracles of Sonic or whatever. They were called the A-Team, and they would help open new locations. And so we're all sitting at this orientation thing, and it's in the Red Lion in Kennewick. We're in this like auditorium type room, and the Alan Parsons Project is playing, and the A-Team is skating in on roller skates to get introduced.
Yeah, so for the interest of time, I mean, I know we could go down that rabbit hole for a long time here, but we do got to get to the Apocalypse Now segment. I know last week we were talking about the demon pronouns video, so let's get to that here and have the audience see it.
Yeah, I think if we had to see it, they should have to see it too. Let's roll the clip.
Hi, my name's Jasper. I use they pronouns.
Hi, my name is Liana. I use they demon pronouns.
This video is how to use our pronouns. So Liana uses they them pronouns and demon pronouns. So the first sentence would be, Liana is my partner, they are cute, and I am theirs. I love them very much, and I hope they love themselves too. For the demon pronouns, it would be, Liana is my partner, Deem is cute, and I belong to Deem. I love Demon very much, and I hope Deem loves Demon's self too. Then interchanging the two would be, Liana is my partner, they are cute, and I am Deem's. I love Demon very much, and I hope they love Demon's self too.
All right. That's a painful one to watch, but what's more egregious to you? The actual demon pronouns or the insane clown posse makeup?
Yeah, also the fact that clearly one of them is a girl who's trying to be a male demon, and the other one's, I don't know what it is, but like
I thought there were two boys.
I think one of them's a girl with like a kind of pixie haircut, and then the other one's definitely a boy who's like, hi, I'm Liana, use demon pronouns or whatever it was. Like it's definitely a guy.
Well, they use they demon pronouns. When the hell did we go from you get one set of pronouns and this, Liana bitch is going for two pronouns now? You get two sets?
Well, hold on. Maybe obviously this person identifies as a legion of demons. Like, and I think that's a biblical thing, right? Like there are many of us in here.
I think legion actually might be the name of one demon, right?
Oh, I don't know. I think I always assumed it meant like there's a few of us in here.
Yeah, it might be.
We're having a good old time. We're having a party.
There's a couple demon names mentioned in the Bible that I'm not going to repeat right now. I'll be looking over my shoulder. But I guarantee you, Leona is not aware of any of them. The other thing too is it's only a matter of damn time before Instagram adds demon pronouns as an option, a selectable option.
I know we're both slippery slope guys. We preach slippery slopes a lot, but if that ever happens, I actually will kill myself. And I'm not just blowing smoke here. I won't be able to live on that kind of a planet. I mean, last week, we just had some ladies who were like saying wear masks at Christmas, and they did a horrible rendition of White Christmas. It was just unforgivable, but that was just idiocy. Whereas this is like, is this actually the work of Beelzebub? Does Satan have a grasp on these bastards?
100%, dude. They're probably demon possessed,
but they don't know
probably, they're one. No, they're on the same level as Reagan from The Exorcist. That's how possessed they are.
And Kaiser Soze has a word to say on this. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing people he didn't exist. And then they're like, no, we're him. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Crappy Days. I think that's about it this week. We'll see you again next week if I don't kill myself. After having seen that video, I can't give you any guarantees. We're available on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify and YouTube. So give us a look, especially if you want to see that, if you're listening to this now on Spotify or Apple, you need to see that demon video. So get on YouTube and check that out. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.